Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Thanks for tuning in again. I appreciate all of you that are watching on a daily basis. You're really helping spread the good word of the channel. We're just out here trying to help everyone learn a little bit more about fishing, try to apply it so that they can catch more fish on the water, and we're getting a lot of really good feedback. I know a lot of you guys have been watching on a daily basis and seen that I've done several videos recently on different types of jigs, whether they're casting jigs or football jigs or swim jigs. I love jig fishing. And a lot of questions I've gotten, a lot of comments on those videos are regarding the type of jig head. Am I using a tungsten jig head or am I using a lead jig head? And for the most part, guys, I gotta tell you, I think the lead jig head is the better way to go, except for a few situations. And I'll get to those. First, I'm going to talk about the lead-headed jig. And before I get into the jigs, I just want to remind you guys that if you're looking to support the channel, you can go over into my store and click the link that'll take you to my Spread Shop store and purchase t-shirts. You can go to fishthemoment.com to purchase lake breakdowns that I've done. I've done a whole bunch of northern lakes as well as southern lakes that specialize in fishing for smallmouth. So you can head over to fishthemoment.com. And lastly, if you watch on a regular basis, hit the subscribe button because it'll get you entered into my monthly prize drawings. There's only one way to win, and you got to be a subscriber. So today's topic, lead head versus tungsten head jigs. You know, a lead-headed jig would be like this dirty jig, Scott Canterbury flipping jig. I've got on here a Berkeley meaty chunk, or another jig that I really like is this Kitech casting jig with a tungsten head, again with a smaller meaty chunk on the back. Now what I want to point out here though is both of these are 1/2 ounce, so you can see that the profile of the Kitech tungsten jig head is definitely smaller than the 1/2 ounce Scott Canterbury jig. You know, that's why a lot of people like to go with tungsten, is because it is smaller in profile than a normal lead-headed jig. But there's a couple things I want to point out specifically about a lead head that I really like. The first being that just because something's smaller doesn't make it better. So if I'm fishing around wood or I'm fishing around grass, I actually will prefer to go with a lead head in those situations because the head is slightly bigger and it's going to prevent me from really getting buried down into that wood or into that grass, which can just make the cast not even that good of a cast. It ruins the cast. Or you get stuck more. You know, the smaller head of a tungsten jig head will get down into cracks, you know, in the wood, and it'll lead to more hangups. Now, sometimes you do want to get down into those areas, but generally if I'm flipping wood, a bigger head is going to prevent me from getting stuck in those, you know, in those branches that are crossed like this. If I've got branches that are crossed, my line gets wedged in the middle, and a bigger head will allow you to pull it up and over easier. A smaller head will really want to wedge into that crack in the branches and therefore lead to you getting stuck more. So in that situation, I actually prefer going with a lead head. I don't see any value in flipping a tungsten head into wood or around grass. You know, with a smaller tungsten head, if you're flipping around grass, if you want to really penetrate the grass, yeah, a smaller profile will get you down deeper, but that also means you're going to get balled up more. A bigger profile head will lay more on top of the grass and not penetrate deeper into the grass. So you got to know what you're doing. If you're trying to penetrate the grass, then you may want to go with a tungsten head. But if you're actually just trying to swim it through the grass, or you're just fishing isolated sparse grass, the lead head is the better way to go. The biggest difference for me, though, when it comes to fishing tungsten versus lead has to do with if I'm fishing around rock. So the only cover that I will choose to throw tungsten over lead has to do with my bottom content. If I'm fishing a hard bottom, so rock, you know, chunk rock, a bluff wall, legit rock, I'm not talking gravel, but hard rock, something that when the tungsten hits the bottom, it will make a clack sound versus a thud sound of the lead. That is the only time that I will choose tungsten. I do believe that you will get more bites if you're fishing a straight rock bank. So if I'm going down a bluff wall or going down a 45-degree bank that is all rock or got some big rock mixed in, I do think you'll get more bites on the tungsten in a lot of situations. There are times when it seems like they really like the clack sound that you get from tungsten. So that's the number one time. If I'm fishing a soft bottom, so I'm fishing sand or around mud or, even gravel, I don't think you get enough sound out of either of these to make a difference. And you got to remember, you're paying more for a tungsten jig head than you are a standard lead head jig. So unless I'm fishing a straight rock bank, so if I'm in the Ozarks and I'm fishing, say, a channel swing bank, this is a really good jig. I'm not saying you won't catch them on this, but I do think there's times when you get a little tungsten clacking sound to it where that will excel. But if I'm fishing down in Florida or up here in Wisconsin where we don't have that same sort of rock, yeah, you'll have some rock on the bottom where tungsten may come into hand, but I don't have that big ledge rock. That's where I really think the tungsten jig outperforms. Now, I will say, if I'm trying to go for a much more compact bait, then obviously your tungsten will help you do that. I mean, like I said, these are both half-ounce jigs. The Kitech casting jig is a small, compact jig, and part of that's because of the head. It's a small profile. If you put this same body style and the same small hook into this bigger lead head, you're not going to necessarily get the same look. It's not that same profile. So to go along with that, if I'm looking for a really fast fall and I don't want to upsize in weight, so I feel like I've got 2 half-ounce jigs, this one will fall faster than the lead head because there is less water displacement. Your bait is cutting through the water and falling more like a rock versus a bigger profile jig that's going to be pushing more water out of the way. So if I really want a faster fall and I don't want to go with a heavier head, a tungsten head will achieve that. The same thing can be said for if you're fishing super deep and you just want your bait to fall faster. Again, that may be a time to choose your tungsten over a standard lead head jig. You're not going to run into that much of a saving, but if you are trying to be more efficient on the water, it could be a good time to do it. But again, depending on what you're fishing, you will generally get stuck a lot more with your tungsten head just because it's a smaller profile and it's going to find the cracks in rocks, the cracks in tree branches. It gets stuck more, so you're going to lose more. So you got to be aware of that as well. But when it comes down to it, for me, the only true time where I feel like your tungsten jig head can outperform a standard lead head jig is when you're fishing a good solid rock bank, a chunk rock bank, a channel swing bank, some sort of ledge rock. That's where I do feel like you get that clicking sound that can outperform. But generally, 90% of the time for me, I'm going with lead-headed jigs. The other 10%, I'll go with tungsten, but it's always based on fish and rock. So I hope this was helpful, guys. My same situation goes for when I'm choosing jig heads for like a shaky head. Generally, I'm going to be throwing not a tungsten jig head unless I know I'm going to get some sound out of it, so I'm fishing around rock. That's really the only difference for me. But I hope this was helpful. If it was, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already, and stay tuned for tomorrow's video. It's another good one.